Well, welcome to my podcast called Dad's Not All Right uh, with me, Craig Frazier. Um, I guess really I have to kind of start off with an introduction, right? So one, I'll kind of talk through the what I hope to accomplish in just a brief little bit about me. But first off, the intent of this obviously is to kind of have fun, make light of some of the ridiculousness that we're all experiencing, regardless if it's a dad thing or not. Um, Definitely to discuss some of the mental health challenges that exist out there. We've seen a huge prevalence of that throughout the pandemic. Myself, I've even experienced quite a bit. And then kind of to help remove some of that fear and stigma that exists around that particular set of topics. And then just to talk about what might be going on in life or what might not be going on in life. And then who knows? I might even bring up some of the weird crap that we've done as a society that used to be, quote, acceptable at one point. And now we would probably lose our mind if we were doing any of those things. Because it's always good to have that kind of retrospective look on life and history in itself, because it kind of paints a picture of how we got where we are today. But a little bit about me. I'm in my late 30s. I won't give my direct age away, but I'm in my late 30s. I have 3 children ranging from 12 years old all the way to 8. 2 biological boys, and then my wife and I, we adopted a little girl from India a few years back. So that's about as deep as I'll dive into that. I think other people may have other things to say, but we'll keep it simple and keep it brief for this particular moment. But, I think a lot of people that would watch this, they're going to be relatives, friends, that sort of thing. When you're initially looking at this, you might think I'm going to slam into some politics or something like that. I think there's plenty of podcast, media, everything under the sun to do with politics. So I'm not going to really spend a whole lot of time in that space. If I do something, I'm going to try to make it balanced, as Fox News would say, but truly balanced in the sense that I'm probably going to rip on one side and rip on the other, and it'll be funny because, honestly, if you take all this stuff too seriously, you're going to lose your mind. So that's really what I'll do. It's very partisan. If you do catch me talking politics, you're going to hear a little bit about one side, and then you'll hear a little bit about the other side, and what kind of asinine things they may or may not be doing at that particular moment. And the reason that I kind of want to take that approach is, if you're paying attention at all to the external environment right now, everything's so polarized. It's been that way, at least for the last probably 15 years. And it had to do with the rise of social media. It's just, it can be in your face all the time. And so, politics really take this turn of like, there's a right, there's a wrong, there's good versus evil. And yeah, there's good in all people and there's evil in all people. And you really have to realize that everything's balanced, and it depends on what face they choose to show that particular day. People looked at Donald Trump as some kind of like savior-like figure. I don't know that you could really put him in that particular category. Did some good things, did some terrible things. President, it's what they do, right? Obama was no different. I don't think Joe Biden's going to be any different. Just the tally marks might look a little bit different from, person to person, depending on what levels of failures they exacerbate and what types of weird policies they think they can implement or enforce on the American people. So first and foremost, again, that's probably about as deep of a dive in serious politics as I'm going to get, because the rest of it just needs to be fun for the most part. But, I really want to drive home during this entire thing that, there's a lot of good out there. I recently had an opportunity to attend a military spouses appreciation event. And they do those out here every year where I live. And I generally am able to participate. But this one really, it stood out a little more than normal, obviously, because it was the first one back since the pandemic began. So it was the first in-person one that I had participated in. So it meant a little bit more than just the normal one. On top of that, the one of the guest speakers they had, she said something that really resonated to me. She's a military spouse. I can't remember her name to save my life, but what she said, it really resonated. Because I think it's true in all instances. And, I was just talking about politics. Politics can be very brutal, make you not like people that you should care about, like your family or a coworker, a friend, your neighbor, or hell, just a stranger having a rough go on the side of the road, That's what politics can do. It's very divisive. And what she said, politics aside or anything like that, it really resonates to the point that, when you care for someone, when you really love someone, like in that unconditional sense, and we have those people in our lives, right? We have family members, we have friends that we love unconditionally. We love them because of who they are. And what she said was very simple. It's that, when you're faced with obstacles, more or less, you presented these challenges, and you don't quite know what to do. You don't know what that next step actually looks like. And you're not sure how you can really help the person. What you do is you love them and you support them, and everything else will work out. And I really do believe that. I think it's a very, very simple statement. And some of the most simplest of all statements mean a lot. And this is one of them. Because I think if you're faced with obstacles, it doesn't matter if it's a cancer diagnosis, it doesn't matter if it's some mounting mental health crisis, it doesn't even matter if it's, something in opposition of the way that you were raised. If you love that person, you love that person. You're looking beyond all of those things. You're looking beyond whatever it is that at that moment you're like, because you love them. And you know that if you love them, you need to support them. And, I'm from the South. I was raised in a very, very modest Christian home. And, it's probably not a shock to most people that I was raised in the environment that, if you turned out maybe gay or something like that, it might mean that you lose some of your family members as a result. And I made up my mind a very long time ago, and I recently, probably was the first few times I ever vocalized it, but I made my mind up a very long time ago with my children. It really didn't matter what or who they would love. That wasn't my thing. That wasn't something I was worried about. I do want them to love. I do want to find that person that means a lot to them, and someone they can love unconditionally. I do want that for them, but it doesn't matter if that person looks kind of like them, or similar, race or whatever, any of those things, and none of that matters. My biggest complaint is, like, you just don't show up with a piece of crap who's just a drain on you. That type of person exists in every realm of our society. So that's what I want for my kids. It's very simple, and so I lean back to that statement, like if you're faced with any of these obstacles that are presenting us out there, job loss, a divorce, any of these negatives that kind of like just slam in on you, try to reset yourself a little bit. There's plenty of exercises that a person can do to kind of help reset their mental clock, and maybe try some of those things. And additionally, remember, when you're dealing with someone who you truly care about, you want to care for them, you want to support them, you want to love them. And that's going to go a million miles further than trying to make whatever situation, whatever issue that is presenting itself to you at that moment, making it try to conform to you, making it to where you think you have control of it. And that's been the hardest lesson I've had to learn in the last couple of years, is there are things that are just completely outside of your control. And what you look like when you're trying to control some of those things If you've ever seen the video of the guy trying to mop up on the beach, that's what you look like. You've got no control over that situation. Just go with it as best you can and be there to support those that you love, and they'll be there to support you. Because at some point you're going to have a moment or a few moments that you need to rely on some of that love and support. So it's kind of a deeper topic than I probably wanted to hit on kind of first rattle out of the box, and kind of hopping back and forth on the nastiness of politics and stuff. But they can be very nasty. And I think, one of the things that's jumped out at me during this entire experience with the pandemic is people really get hung up on what they're leaving behind. And I don't necessarily mean in a good way. Like, a real legacy looks one way, but a lot of our people in our society are obsessed with this, like, figment of a legacy. Like, they get really obsessed with it. And, you kind of think in the back of your mind that kids are our legacy. Kids are the brightest part of our future. And at the going rate, like, if we don't promote more individuality amongst our children versus this kind of conformist culture that has really started to run rampant, I think that future's bright, all right, but it has a dimmer switch on it, and it's kind of looks like we're getting ready for a movie, folks, and probably one that involves a lot of animation and a talking rat. Very Mickey Mouse of it all. But aside all those things, we do get kind of obsessed with the legacy, and one of the things I want to leave behind after it's all said and done, I mean, money would be great, but that's not really the goal. Is I want them to have, my kids, my grandkids, those around me, the legacy to be more of one that's of hope and of compassion. I'm really trying to get back to that space of providing more hope and being a more compassionate person, because I think that's what this world needs a lot more of. It doesn't need a ton of politicians. It doesn't need a bunch of people trying to sell you the next great thing that's supposed to help you think better or be more clear conscious. It's not the point. It's definitely not the point. So I think we have to spend a little bit of time really thinking about what our legacy is supposed to be, what we really want it to look like. Who's included in that? Are you included in it, or is it just some outcome that you are a part of? And I wouldn't want that for myself either, is that, I'm just a part of the story. That's not a legacy, you're a footnote. I want to be the story. I want my kids to have that story, and I want them to be able to tell their children about those stories. I want them to be able to say that my dad was brave because he was experiencing something he didn't quite understand, and he took it head on as best he could. Made mistakes along the way, but he fought and fought along the road. Which kind of leads me into the next thing that I wanted to talk about, and really the heart of what I'm hoping to spend the most time talking about during this, at least on the personal side of it, because I will try to mix in some things that are just purely humorous. But this isn't so much in the humor category. It does explain a whole lot. But I was recently diagnosed as bipolar 1. And, I think it's one of those kind of things, like I'd kind of hyped myself up for it before I got the diagnosis. And I really wasn't thinking it was going to be bipolar 1. I felt, based on everything that was going on with me, that it was going to be more like a bipolar 2. And what I saw is more of these kind of like mini cycles popping were actually more like long durations of a mixed cycle. And if you're wondering what that is, I mean, you can research, the types of episodes that people with bipolar disorder experience. And it's wide-ranging. There's commonality, but not everyone's exactly the same. As you would imagine, people are people. But, that the diagnosis when I got it, which was a little over a month ago right now, it hit me kind of harder than I thought it would. Because you really see yourself as invincible. No matter what you may think, you kind of in the back of your mind, you think you can take on most things. You can handle most situations that are presented to you. And it shocked me. It shocked me kind of to my core. And so I've done a lot of research around, the disorder, what it looks like, how different people cope. And while I don't think my case is the most shining example of you'll be okay, it's definitely not as extreme as some people. Like I said, it's almost like it's a spectrum of how it can fall. So if it is a spectrum, I would say I'm in the right smack in the middle, and it stinks sometimes. It's a rough thing to deal with, and I'm fortunate that I have a good career, and I have access to the right type of doctors and medicines and things like that, because I see it as something that I can only control so much of. Kind of like that mopping up the ocean thing. And there's only so much I can do with it. And so basically I've spent my entire adult life, I've probably been this way for who knows how long, but probably my entire adult life really coping with and fighting this. And then I finally started to lose that fight. And it really did help to get the diagnosis. It really helped frame up why I do some of the things I do, why I say and react the way that I react. And it kind of gets me out of my head space around those things. Not that it justifies any of the terrible fucking things I've said, but it really helps frame it differently in my mind so that I can not only just cope with it, but I can prevent it in the future. And so I do have access to a decent set of professionals that, I'm able to do different types of therapy with. And some of those seem to be yielding quite fruitful results. And as time goes on, I'll reveal more about those because I think that's really what this is about. It's about having a dialogue around the things, the challenges that we all face. And so yeah, it's been a little over a month. I do take medication for it, a couple of medications for it. So far, no notable side effects, other than I don't feel like I'm circling death's drain anymore. My head doesn't feel like it's just going to explode with an overwhelming amount of just chaotic thoughts or intrusive emotions. I'm getting to a point where I'm able to actually watch things that should have historically made me uneasy or anxious or upset, those kind of trigger things. I'm able to get through them a little bit better. And so those are the ways I'm kind of testing things. And again, everybody that's in these types of spaces, they operate a little bit differently. This is just how I'm dealing with it, how I'm handling the situation. And what's really nice about it all is I think there's a huge community of people out there that are dealing not only with things like this, but the other various mental health issues that we all face. At the end of the day, if you're not taking care of yourself, there's no way you can take care of another person or anything for that matter. Because if you let yourself go, you're going to let everything else go. You can't be effective for those who actually depend upon you when you're not effective for yourself. And so one thing I'll talk about today as far as one of the techniques that I've been using, it's a visualization meditation that I do. And everybody can come up with these, if you're going through different challenges or you just need to reset the clock and bring yourself back to center or whatever it may be. You could try it. The thing I do is I visualize my grandparents' house. and I have a whole exercise that I do with it. But I go in with the mindset that I do need to reset, or I am going there with the intention of just being calm. I want to have some moments of peace. That's all I'm looking for. So I visualize being at my grandparents' house, a couple of different rooms within that house. I really focus in on some of those key moments and memories that I had at that house. Some of them are with one of my cousins. One of the few of them are just with my grandparents and listening to some of the old stories. Those are always great. If you have the chance to listen to your grandparents or your uncles, aunts, that type, go for it. You get a lot out of listening to their stories because things are different. But I kind of focus in on a couple of those things. I can even visualize the room enough to picture myself sitting down at the couch, listening to the conversation or whatever. And I'm doing this typically with my eyes closed. I do use different types of music. It's not going to be anything heavy metal, I promise. Something that's a little more soothing than that. But I do that, and it really does. I will meditate roughly 10 to 15 minutes like that periodically when stress hits to a certain point, or I will even sometimes start my day off like that. And really, it's just a good refresher. It's a good way to rebalance yourself in the day. And so I think if you're out there kind of hammering through all the dumb that's going on with the economy, or you're just fed up with the fact that, something that was supposed to be one side of the aisle turned out to be the other side of the aisle if you're hammering on the politics side. Or maybe you just accidentally clicked on the Fox News and you realize that they're really preaching the same type of thing about fear. We'll talk about that on a different episode because I do get a kick out of what they try to sell. But kind of going back to my meditative practice, I think one of the things you want to accomplish out of all of it when you're talking about self-care is, I think we fantasize about being justice bringers, if this ever happens, I'm going to handle it like this. Well, that's probably not a great idea to start kind of ruminating about things that haven't happened. I say be the peacemaker. That's what you want to strive to be. And not some guy who's got a gun peacemaker. The peacemaker. Someone who swallows their pride. Someone who apologizes first. Someone who strives to forgive whenever it is possible and will forget about the instances that you were, quote, wronged. I'm not in that space yet, but it's what I strive to be. It's where I strive to live. So, I think we kept this at roughly about 25 minutes, so I'm pretty happy about all that. Again, this is really just a quick introduction to what I'm hoping to accomplish, a little sprinkling of some of the topics. I'll try to make the next one a little more lighthearted, if at all possible. Maybe make fun of a couple celebrities or something like that. I don't know yet. We'll see. But until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful one, and I love you all. Bye.